Okay, in this series of videos to help survivors of abuse, we're now going to talk about impact of abuse. And one of them is our voice. So when we are abused, it can really mess with our voice because sometimes we tried to speak up about the abuse and we were silenced. Other times we may have found the experience of being abused just silenced us and we weren't able to talk about it or say anything about it. And that tends to echo throughout the rest of our lives, that we have problems with how we use our voice. Some of us might find that we don't speak up in situations where it would be healthier for us to speak up. Some of us might find that we sometimes in certain situations use our voice in an overly harsh way. And these can all be natural responses to having our voice taken away when we were abused, when we were young. Another thing that happens to us is our power gets messed up with. So someone else uses power over us in a bad way, which then takes away our agency. It takes away our power. And what that can result in is that for the rest of our lives, we struggle with how we use our power. And what that can mean is in some cases, it means we struggle with having agency and we end up letting other people control our lives and make decisions for us. Or sometimes it can result in us using too much power in an attempt to control so much of our lives that we're trying to protect ourselves from bad things happening again in the future. And so abuse in your past can really impact the way that you use your power or the way you don't use your power in the present. Another way that we get impacted by abuse is in terms of relationships. And these three terms I've used, voice, power, and relationship, are terms that Dr. Diane Langberg uses in her schema for talking about abuse. And when someone abuses you, they use their relationship with you in a bad way. And that makes it really hard when another human being relates to you in that way. That can really mess up the way we relate to other people. Some of us might have experienced that even people that we love dearly later in life, we have certain limitations in our relationship with them. And one of the reasons is because we had relationships fundamentally messed up when we were younger, particularly if it's someone who you trusted, someone who was an authority figure in some way, and then they relate to you in this bad way by abusing you. That can really make our relationships difficult. Now, another category that I find helpful to think about how trauma impacts us is thinking. Because when you're a child, you learn to think from what your parents tell you or what your guardians tell you or what adults tell you. You know, that this is something that Dr. Langberg talks about. We learn what we think is true from the adults around us. And when you get abused, often the people who abused us and the people who are complicit with them say things to us about the abuse that isn't true. And we can often believe those things and then have wrong thinking about our abuse. That's why some of us for years might have been in denial about the abuse. That's why many of us didn't even know it was abuse for many years, and so on. And this can really mess with our thinking, how we think about things. It can also mess with how we think about who are safe people in the future. Some of us find that we go through a list of relationships with people who are unsafe. And we're like, why do I keep being in this pattern? And one of the reasons is because our thinking got messed up when we were younger. And so this is just another way that abuse can really impact us for years to come in our lives. So I just give a few what I would call lies that we sometimes think about abuse. One is, I deserve the abuse. So many survivors think this. They think, oh, I deserved it. It was my fault. Sometimes people say, a bit linked to this, if I'd been more ... then it wouldn't have happened. You know, if I'd been stronger, if I hadn't been drinking that day, if I hadn't been naughty, you know, and these are all lies where we believe that we were abused because we did these things instead of recognizing we were abused because someone did wrong and they abused us. Sometimes we think it's my fault for not stopping the abuse, and we attribute to ourselves way more than you should really attribute to someone who was that vulnerable at the time. It's really normal to think these things. I'm not saying they're correct. I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying it's really normal to think these things. So don't beat yourself up if you've been thinking some of these things about your abuse. It's perfectly normal for you to be thinking this way, because that's one of the ways your thinking gets messed up. Okay, let's call it a day for now. Remember, please do something now to take good care of yourself, something that helps you self-soothe, something that relaxes you, something that brings you joy. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care.